History Club. We have a great presentation tonight, but before we get to Greg Jarvis, I'd just like to say a few words about Coral. I knew I'd do this.
I knew you were doing it.
You're in good company.
Well, what can I say? I mean, we all know how much she loved Georgetown, how much Georgetown loved her. And one little tidbit that I can tell you about the connection between Cora Lou and me personally is that her dad and my mother went to the Georgetown school together. And Cora Lou always remembered that. So enjoy tonight's presentation. I think the can is in the back for cash donations. We always appreciate that because it helps pay the rent for the community center as well as, and the community center doesn't charge us rent, but we pay the community center for letting us do this. So I'd like to present our speaker tonight. He's a retired member of the Department of Interior. I can't tell you a whole lot because I'm kind of lost in words right now. Greg Jarvis is our speaker, and please welcome him.
Hey, good evening. A little bit about myself. Most of you know my story. My wife and I have been part of the community up here now for about 12 years, right before we retired. And I retired from the National Park Service as their senior planner in the office. So I did lots of planning for different projects from Hawaii to Florida and everywhere in between. So I have that kind of background. First of all, I also thank Tom, and I wanted to dedicate this presentation to Cora Lou. She always mentioned that Georgetown Silver Plume National Historic Landmark District was just one step away from being a National Park Service site, and that's how important it is, which hopefully through this presentation you will see that and recognize that also. So, and I know that she mentioned that we were kind of looking at her LinkedIn page for the store, and she actually mentions that inside the LinkedIn page for Nizel and Anderson store about the importance of the Georgetown Silver Plume National Historic Landmark District. So, with that, I wanted to give a little bit of photo credit here to Gary Register, where they took this photo, which is up on the ridge, overlooking, and it's actually the cover of a document that a lot of you probably seen. I actually have some extra copies here if you'd like to take one tonight. And a great view of the Mountain Valley where you can see Georgetown and Silver Plume in the background there. So, on to the first question, and I've said it a number of times. What does NHLD stand for, Ellen?
National Historic Land District.
Landmark District.
Landmark District.
National Historic Landmark District. Yes. Very important. And if you ever forget, there's a big brown sign before you get off the exit. Both here and in Silver Plume. So make sure you do that. And I did not stop and take that photo. I got that off of Google Earth. So I didn't have to stop on the highway. So that's where we are located. And then also just to mention what really draws a lot of people to this community and the people that are in this, they talk about how special it is, how authentic it is. Right before I retired, I have a very long relationship with Channel Islands National Park and the Chief of Cultural Resources there. She used to work for the State Historic Preservation Office in California. But she actually had been working for the Park Service and was in Denver for a meeting of the cultural resource people and came up here to Georgetown after their meeting, and they got a tour of the Hotel de Paris, walked around the National Historic Landmark District, because I told her I just bought a place in Georgetown, Colorado. She goes, oh, I know, I was just there like 2 months ago. What an authentic place. And there is a reason that it's very authentic. It's because of this designation, and it's because of the other letters that I talked about at the beginning, that HDPLC, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And that's why this place is so special. So what is a National Historic Landmark District? Here's some government mumbo jumbo. A National Historic Landmark District is a geographical area that the United States government recognizes as having cultural features, landscapes, buildings, archaeological resources that are of utmost significance and worthy of preservation and has significance at a national level. There's ways that they take a look at historic places. They can have local significance, they can have statewide significance, or it can have national significance. And a national landmark district has national significance. And the Park Service is responsible for that, and overseeing that, making the designation, and overseeing the landmark program that runs throughout the country. So there's the office that I used to work in. There's people in that, building's no longer occupied. Everybody kind of consolidated. But they kind of oversee and they advise people on the National Historic Landmark Districts. And we, to this day, consult with those folks on different things. So, what are some other National Historic Landmark Districts? Denver Civic Center was established in 2012. Georgetown, 1966. Talk about that a little bit later. Telluride has one from 1961, which is the dating. I mean, that's almost the same time the National Historic Preservation Act and the Landmark Districts program began, as in 61. And the Trujillo Homestead National Historic Landmark District, which I believe is down in the southern part of the San Luis Valley, if I remember right. So, anybody recognize this? Where is it? I know. I forgot. I didn't even know it was there. And I sit there all the time. And walk by it all the time. Yeah, it's right on Strauss Park. I'm sure Bob knows exactly where it's at. But that's our plaque that was put there in 1966 when our National Historic Landmark District was established. But a little bit of history. In 1955, the first historical survey was done. Actually kind of found that right before I retired. I asked Washington, D.C. to give me all the information that they had on the National Historic Landmark District, which I could do as a private citizen, but it did help having the nps.gov email, probably. But I got over 450 pages of a PDF that had all kinds of photos and all kinds of information. We do have that now, and I shared that with Christine way back, I think in 2015 when I first got it. So we do have that information, all that background information here.
Excuse me, is that in the archives?
Yes, it is. Christine has it.
And Gary, how many national historic landmarks are in the United States? Do you know?
Greg?
Greg, why? I do.
Because I'm always sitting
Both
next to
of you.
Gary at the meetings
That's
that
right,
we attend
you're
together.
next to each other.
And
My
we'll start with
sincerest
G.
apologies.
There is actually probably thousands at this point. There's lots of different ones, and there's new ones that come around quite a bit. And I don't know the exact number. I should
Thanks,
have
Gary.
Googled that. Or asked Justin. So it was designated in 1966, and the boundary was designated in 1976. And there's a lot of significance to the boundary of our National Historic Landmark District, and I'll show that with you here in just a few slides. And then in 2020, we did this document. A number of people here in this room were involved with this. And Cindy was asking me for some kind of tool that we could communicate the importance of the National Historic Landmark District to all our partners and the local community. So we kind of come up with this. I developed this format for the National Park Service, and we did this for all 420 National Park Service units for the centennial in 2016. And it's actually a really nice document. And actually, the National Historic Landmark Program has a number of these, and they've been passing them out to their other National Historic Landmark districts, saying, maybe you should do something like this to communicate what's going on. But I'll kind of go through this coming up on the next few slides also. And that was done in 2020, like I said. And you know, the work never stops on these kinds of things if you want to keep them alive and moving and adjust them with the times. So what are the boundaries of the National Historic Landmark District? I said ours was very special. A, is it just the historic areas of each town? B, are the historic areas of each town and the historic railroad corridor between the town? Or each town proper, you know, extending beyond the historic areas and the railroad corridor? Is it in one of those three? Over 3,000 acres, 5 square miles of the Georgetown Silver Plume Valley. That is what is protected as the National Historic Landmark District, which is extremely unusual. Usually it's very small areas. And this map here, which I put together for the document on the back here, shows that. You can see it goes all the way up the Mountain Valley. And actually I got some really cool Google Earth stuff that I'll show you. They'll bring it alive here in just a bit. So it's one of the largest National Historic Landmark districts in the country that I know of. And that was done to protect the scenic and the historic view sheds. And that's why this valley is so much different than any other mountain valley that you drive through in Colorado that has condos built up on the side and everywhere else. It's because of that, and also because of that next step I'll talk about, the HDPLC. So kind of the purpose of the National Historic Landmark District, you know, located here high in the mountains of Colorado's Front Range, the Georgetown Silver Plume National Historic Landmark District conserves and interprets the architecture, ambiance, lifestyle, and setting of the two best preserved 19th century silver mining boom towns of the Rocky Mountain West. Okay, pretty succinct, pretty simple. It took us 2 days to write that. It takes a long time to do that and regurgitate it and get it exactly the way you want it. And we did these purpose statements for all 420 National Park Services sites. And believe me, it's good when people go home and sleep at night, come back the next day for a workshop meeting. It comes off your mouth a lot easier the second, third day. So that's kind of the purpose. Significance. This talks about why Georgetown and Silver Plume merit the National Historic Landmark District status. What's significant here in our community? It was one of the leading silver mining districts. It was amongst the most important between, trying to read my notes here, 1859 and 1878 in particular. I think that was prior to Leadville booming up. The next one is the architecture. The neighboring towns, both of Georgetown and Silver Plume, retain a high density and variety of late 19th century commercial residential architecture. And I've heard all different kinds of things. Per population, this is the highest density that you will find anywhere of Victorian structures. That becomes because of our amazing history of fire protection, fire hydrants, and our hydroelectric dam that took out all the gas heating or gas lights and candle lighting. So that's why a lot of these wooden structures are preserved here in Georgetown from the late 1800s that many of us live in. The next thing is kind of the lifestyles and the cultural history here that are preserved here. Kind of talking about the community that reflects a high degree of ethnic and cultural diversity inhabited by first generation immigrants and multinational investors alike. We had the transportation component here and also the industry, and this kind of reflects the importance of the Georgetown Loop Railroad and the development of that, and the high bridge, and then actually we identified in here the hydroelectric plant, which was one of the first here in the state of Colorado, dated in 1900. The next one is the tourism and recreation, which this town always kind of fell into even during the silver times. The railroad came up to be kind of a workhorse and ended up being something that provided people an adventure, and people would get on a train in Union Station, and then they would be in the snow at the top of Mount, I just looked out my head. McClellan, in a space of about 6 hours, and people, they signed up to do that. Came from all over the world to experience that, and in particular the high bridge was an international, global sensation. And also the hospitality that's linked with the Hotel de Paris, which is one of the buildings that is identified in the National Historic Landmark District designation. And what we thought was kind of important to this as we looked at this was the post-World War II revival, kind of fostering the town and it coming back with the advent of all the ski areas just to the west of us, Loveland and A-Basin being some of the first ski areas to be developed, and the town kind of focusing on capitalizing on those economic drivers. And the last one here, which took a little bit of convincing, was historic preservation and the preservation efforts of both of these towns, the multiple groups of nonprofits. We actually have a preservation partners group. Once we put this document together, we usually have, and I know a number of people in this room show up to that meeting. Every May we kind of talk about what was gone on with HGI, what has gone on with the Energy Museum, what has gone on with the Friends of Silver Plume. So everybody can get together and have kind of a time to share everybody's goals for the next year and what they succeeded in their accomplishments for the past year. We do that in May, right before tour season gets together over at the schoolhouse. But that fostering of historic preservation in this town that has been a model for a lot of other communities here in Colorado is significant. And the key resources are those things that play into why things are significant. What are the exact things that are doing that? The mountain and valley views and landscapes is the primary thing. Is preserving that historical viewshed that we have here with the mining claims up on the mountainsides, lack of development on the mountainsides, the historic mines and mills, as I mentioned there. The industrial and engineering features, the different mills there, Centennial Mill, it's down here. Oh gosh, I know we just talked about what's up in Silverdale, the mine. Colorado Central Mine, up in Silverdale. All those things that contribute to the industrial features here. The architecture, as I talked about, I mean, you can walk down Rose Street and you can see an Italianate structure set next to a Queen Anne, set next to give me some other examples.
Italianate. Next to Italianate or
It's
Carpenter Gothic.
yeah.
Yeah.
To the Gothic, that's what I was thinking, the church house, and I just slipped out of my head. But you can just walk down and see all this different architecture. So, and actually I have an architecture book of the United States, and there's a number of structures here in Georgetown that are inside that book. The hospitality, recreation, and tourism, the Hotel de Paris being one of the main features of that. The Clear Creek Library and Archives being a key resource for the National Historic Landmark District was identified. And the collaborative preservation, all those folks that I mentioned getting together, being able to talk, and that's why this town has, is the way it is now. And it goes on from generation to generation. What does this destination provide? In forms of protection, the Section 106 is kind of a legal term for cultural resource preservation. And in the event of a federal government work that threatens a place, it gives us some power as a community to talk to that. Hey, Michael, did you have a question?
Yes, because it says right there, decommissioning of the power plant, for example.
Yes.
What happened to the Georgetown power plant? It's in the district.
Yeah, let me get to that one.
Okay.
Let me get through this, and I'll touch on it a bit. But it is in either the next slide or the slide after. And I hope I'll cover it, but if not, call me on it. So when a building or something is built or structured comes into the community, or it's a federal action, one of the things that happened here in the recent past is the building of the Granada Pass Road, and a lot of the walls that were constructed and those kinds of things. We could lean on this being a National Historic Landmark District for them not to make it like how they would build a road in another community. So we really leaned on that 106 protection to do that. And it can also make people, property owners that have historic structures, eligible for preservation funds and historic tax credits that can help offset those rehabilitation of a structure. Also can cause some issues with insurance. I told this story a few years ago. There's some new people in the room, but it was a really funny one. We were trying to get insurance for our house up here in Georgetown, and they said, well, does it have a plaque on it? And I'm like, oh yeah, it does have a plaque on it. Well, can you do anything you want to do with that house if you wanted to? Could you paint it pink if you wanted to paint it pink? And I'm like, well, it already is pink. Well, could you paint it purple if you wanted to paint? Well, the neighbor has a purple house already. No, but those are things that we have. The design review board, trying to keep this place authentic, and all these different efforts come together to do that and create this special place. Here's that slide. I don't know how many people were here, but Georgetown citizens and PSC Pulls apart, and this is actually in that PDF of
Yeah.
600 pages that I got from Washington D.C. That's a 1968, July 11th article when they wanted to put power poles right through the middle of town. High tension power poles, the ones like you see going up the side of the mountain. Cindy, were you involved with this?
Yes.
You don't want to admit to be involved in it.
Well, so was Charlie the Beagle.
What's that?
Charlie the Beagle was one of the demonstrators. Charlie was a dog who lived with the town, and he had a wonderful sign that said he preferred wooden poles.
So that's a story that you will only hear here tonight. Wouldn't cow. So we need to carry that with us. But that was a story. 68. It says 7/15/68 from the Rocky Mountain News, and it's in the archives in Washington D.C. Nobody probably will ever see it, but I found it the other night. And then this other document is one that's going on right now, April 2023. This kind of refers to what Michael was talking about, is the hydropower decommissioning, and it's a FERC project. Okay, what that means is it's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That's their project. It's Excel's decommissioning, but that group, that federal office, has to do the compliance and the 106 and have it signed off. They have to provide that guidance to us here in the community. And we can use, as we did with the power poles, our power as National Historic Landmark District to do that. There's some other things that came up on another slide I'll talk about, because actually the significance of the National Historic Landmark District stops prior to the construction of the hydropower plant, but we have some solutions to that, which I'll talk about. But and some of you have come to those Excel meetings. There's actually another group of us here in town that have and a lot of, pretty much everybody, they're here tonight. We're kind of coming up with some ideas and strategy to try to make the best outcome of that power project being shut down, and the dam removal and the restoration and those kinds of things. Kind of making it all encompassing as the Heritage Park, incorporating the Silverdale area, the Rutherford Trail, all the way down to the Energy Museum, and making it a Energy Museum and hydropower in the west, kind of highlighting that in that space there. But and HDI's kind of signed on to help that with the gym board, and we're trying to get everything together. We got another group with the Park Service that kind of helps us with groups that are outside of national park units, but there's a lot of support from them to help us put together and do some planning for that, and provide some help and providing grants for that. So that's briefly what is going on with that. I could probably do a whole another presentation on the hydropower, but that's that. New considerations. This is kind of because that building was done after 1893, which the original survey said that structures from 1859 to 1893, you see a C there, and that C means sort of around that date, and we thought we had like a 10-year beyond that date. Well, we found out after some recent things that have happened at the Park Service that national landmark districts have to have a definite end date. So they're now saying it is 1893. So things like the power plant aren't eligible to be contributing features, but we are taking a look at doing an overlay of a national historic site on the National Register. That would include post-1893 structures. And it's currently underway. And actually, Christine and Cindy are kind of leading that effort to get things like the power station. We're talking the Silver Plume School is outside of that. The railroad grade and some other different things in town and some other structures. And our survey's ongoing, and then that nomination form will be put together and presented, and we have SHPO support on that. Did I get that covered? Good there? Yes. I get a thumbs up from Cindy and everything.
Big deal, Greg.
Okay, and this kind of relates to what I'm sure Cora Lou always remembered in 1989, and I actually remember this because it was right the year I started working for the Park Service is in 1989. They were doing a Georgetown Silver Plume Historic District study of alternatives on what the future of this town could be, and there was actually 6 different alternatives, which, gosh, when I did planning, no more than 3. People can't follow more than 3. So we never did more than 3 on that. This one had 6, and we kind of read through all of them, and they had environmental impacts, they had socioeconomic impacts. Actually, a number of people that I know in the Park Service worked on that, and one of my mentors, John Page, worked on it. Bob Spooty worked on it. I saw his name in the back when I looked at this. That looked at a bunch of different alternatives. The 6th one was having National Park Service come in and manage this as a National Historical Site. Similar to like Harper's Ferry, there's other historic sites up in Alaska, Sitka, other communities that are National Historic Landmark District, National Historic Sites that are communities that are managed both as Park Service sites and communities. The town at that time decided it would take one of the other alternatives. And from what I understand, there was kind of a community vote at that time, and which actually I think is probably a better thing all in all for the town, and especially with the strength of historic preservation that this community had, really benefits it. Probably not being a National Park Service site. Been to those places, and they are a little, not places to live, places to visit. So I think we've really found a nice, good place here in Georgetown. Does anybody remember this? No?
This?
Or remember the National Park Service coming in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Well, and at that point in time, one of the major changes after this was gaming in Central City and Blackhawk. And all of a sudden there were some funds that weren't available. So at this point in time, both towns were looking at these huge numbers of resources and no money anywhere. So then you get cell towers and gaming, and all of a sudden there's some money. But prior to that, every one of these buildings was looking at a future where they could just tumble. So it was, nobody really wanted a huge change, but nobody also wanted everything to fall down. And that's why, and it was a hot issue, of course it was.
Very hot.
Yeah, it was. But it also was one of those things, like I say, who knew that cellular communication and gambling would come along? That wasn't one of the 6 alternatives, But without it.
Those short-sighted plans.
Yeah. But with those, you're pumping millions into these 2 communities that weren't there. And that's why it started up as a discussion.
So that leads us to the second part of the conversation, which is the Historic Districts Public Land Commission. How many people have heard of this? Oh, that's good. And actually about 7 years ago, when I announced I was going to retire, in that corner over there, Cindy pulled me and goes, I have something that you might want to do in retirement. Come over to my house in the morning. And I came back with a big box and a binder and a meeting to go to in November. And ever since, I've kind of taken over there as the executive director, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of similar things that I was used to doing. And so it's nice continuing to use those parts of my brain. But first of all, this was a brainchild of one of our good friends, Frank Young, and I want to give him lots of credit to this because this is extremely visionary. There's no other place in the country this kind of setup is there. And he worked with BLM and traveled from here to Washington before he retired in right after 1989. Because I remember having wine with him at Troya's and him. I go, when did you retire, Frank? He goes, 1989. And I go, oh, that's the year I started in the Park Service. And he always thanked me for the Park Service, diverting all the attention with that study that I just showed. And it allowed him to get some of these things going without some of the challenges that could have come up. But this Historic District Public Lands Commission is a key piece of why this place is the place it is. And it falls out of it being a National Historic Landmark District, first of all. And I have no idea how he came up with this concept. So, and unfortunately, I can't have a cup of coffee with him to discuss it.
We have his 1 hour discussion of all of these things that's out online, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he talks
oh,
about.
Gosh, I could have just played that.
It was a former Devil's Gate program. And I will tell you, some of this started because Cy Jamison, the director of the BLM, came to Georgetown for the dedication of the wildlife viewing station.
Okay.
I went to lunch with the commissioners and Frank and a few other people in the back room of the RAM. And he was talking about the fact that the BLM lands are just scattered little pieces.
I got maps of that. I'm gonna make you do
you got that. But so you had the commissioners and Frank and Cy Jamison here saying, it would be cheaper for us to give this to you.
Okay.
Anyway.
What happened in the back room of the RAM? Now I know that's wrong.
Yeah. I was there.
You were there. We need to have coffee.
I was at that lunch.
That's how a lot of things happen.
Yeah.
So, the purpose of the commission is to establish a cooperative, unified, and coordinated planning of design and implementation and development of recreational preservation and educational use of these HDPLC lands. Which is, and I read this bylaw and I'm like, well, that sounds like the establishing legislation for the National Park Service. So the history, actually I think after the lunch at Red Ram, in 1986, BLM announced the agency's intent to dispose of all these land holdings here in Clear Creek County. Within the National Historic Landmark District. In 1988, the towns of Georgetown and Silver Plume and the Colorado Historical Society, now known as Sister Colorado, in Clear Creek County submitted applications for the ownership of those lands. And in 1989, the same year I started at the Park Service, 35 years ago, 36 years ago, the applicants formed the HDPLC Lands Commission by intergovernmental cooperative managed agreement. And actually that Park Service document that I showed that was done in 1989 actually mentions the HDPLC inside of that, which I was surprised to see because it was a brand new, fresh thing that was out there. But in historic Georgetown, HGI joined the commission because of conservation of holdings on Saxon and Leavenworth Mountains, which I'll show you exactly where those are. And in 1990, the Colorado Division of Wildlife made applications to BLM for the sheep range west of I-70 and became a commission member at that time, and right after the establishment of HDPLC. And in 1994, the public lands applied from BLM were transferred from federal ownership by public law, federal law, that established those lands as part of HDPLC. And said it's a planning forum for these agencies to get together. It's mandated by public law that everybody gets together. And sometimes I have to remind folks of that. You're here because we have these lands and that's our responsibility. And authority of those lands remain with the ownership and the agencies, so they're all owned by all those different groups that I've mentioned. But they can only be used for light recreation and primarily for resource protection, both cultural and natural resources. And the land management agencies within the historic district, as a land management agency that had lands here in the historic district, and 1996, the Forest Service became a voting member of the group. And recently, with right after taking this over, working with Cindy and even with the county, we became a certified nonprofit. So we don't have to kind of put our money through other different groups here in town, and we're our own nonprofit. Helps with the banking and all that. We have to file taxes now, but it's usually fairly simple. But we can accept donations directly.
Are they tax deductible?
Yes. Yes, Michael.
Do you get any funding from anybody, not donations?
Yeah, so all these different groups, they pay an annual due fee. All these groups right here that I talked about. I was going to quiz you to see if you remember them all, but I just give them to you now. But all these groups do pay, and it's pretty minimal. We actually doubled it because I had gone up in 30-some years, and we sat around the table and said, all the groups said, oh, we can pay twice that much, so we did it twice that much. And we also make donations. We made a donation toward the Silver Plume Mountain project lands and donated money to that and to show our support toward that. Agencies. I'm not a voting member or that. I just facilitate the meetings as their executive director. But we get together every other month at the town hall and talk about a number of different issues, and I'll show you some examples on a couple slides here. But where are these lands? Anything that's colored there is an HDPLC land. So actually over 3,000 acres, because it actually extends beyond the National Historic Landmark District boundaries. But all those lands can only be used for low-level recreation, so they can't be built on, can't put a condo on it. So all those lands are managed by folks. And I will hopefully be able to show you here. Next slide. I'm going to switch over to Google Earth, and sometimes this is a little tricky. Hold on one second. Change my settings. Thanks for bearing with me. So, sorry. It wants to go from multiple displays to just duplicate on this display. Oh, keep changing. Okay. So, here we are, way outside. What's over here?
That's cool.
So, you recognize this, right?
Yeah.
And just to show you, first of all, HDPLC's managed trails are all those trails there. And close that up. And there's your National Historic Landmark District, and there's a couple other additional areas, the Saxon Mountain areas, and a couple of these extended areas that are part of HDPLC. And so here are the pieces of land that Colorado Parks and Wildlife owns. We talked about the sheepkeep area, the orange areas there. So they owned all those. And there are all those interlocked lands, as Christine were talking about.
Right, so these are the former BLM lands,
Yeah, former BLM land.
right,
Plus, we've had additional.
some additional, yeah,
That's stupid, not size
Yeah.
down over there.
some that were donated to other purposes.
Right. So they're always continuing to add to these lands, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Here's the Clear Creek County lands. A lot of them around Saxon Mountain and in and around the lands that have been donated over time also. Town of Georgetown, primarily the stuff that's on the east side of the valley. History Colorado, those blue lands are right around the train, primarily. That's why they got those lands. And the town of Silver Plume, all those lands there. I'm going to just touch on one little special thing here. A lot of these lands in this area here are all brand new lands, are part of the Silver Plume Mountain Project, which was again one of those things that Frank led on. You will notice a lot of these lands up here on the top part aren't part of that. They're all part of another ownership, and I got another slide to show that. But I mean, I can sit and play around with this yeah, I'm making motions, so I'm looking at my little screen, you're looking at a big screen.
But you can see why it has to be governed jointly, I mean,
Right.
this is just,
Says it's braided together.
It's-
So
Yeah, so for example, the parking lot up here, there's like 4 ownerships over the parking lot at Silverdale. And if we don't manage it cooperatively, there would never be that because, HDI has some land up there, the county, the town. I think the Forest Service has a couple parking spaces.
wow.
So it's very complex.
So Greg, are there actual volunteers that like maintain those sites and trails?
We work cooperatively with Clear Creek County. We also have volunteers. See Kimberly over here, she helps out. She's actually one of our permittees with her outdoor discovery group and bringing people up there, teaching them about snowshoeing and hiking and leave no trace ethics. She does a lot of help, probably picks up more than her fair share, way more than her fair share of poop bag. get left around on the trail. You know, we have people and a number of other people maybe help out over time. I think Smokey's helped build bridges up there, and trails. Somebody, Tommy, you told me, you know, that you helped work on the trail, the Rutherford Trail,
Yeah.
kind of going up there.
Don't they have a group that leaves the courthouse every morning when I'm down there with all kinds of trail repair equipment and stuff?
Yeah, there's a trail crew from Clermont County. We work cooperatively with them. They get some of their funding from the Forest Service, some places with Forest Services. A lot of the trails, they just cooperatively help us manage. They're part of our group when we get together and talk. John Butcher is, we talk to him, you know, every meeting on what's going on with the trails and what we can do. Do we need to fund some more food bag dispensers or signage here or there? So we do a lot of work cooperatively with Clear Creek County on all the trail management and trail construction, like the Notch Trail. That any of you guys know where the Notch Trail is?
Yeah.
Off the second switchback up going up Grinnell Pass Road. They just put that in 2020, and it's a way to get to slower from Georgetown without walking along the interstate.
Been walking there for 30 years.
So, yeah, no, it's a historic trail, yeah, but it was put in more, a better defined trail, I guess, by Clear Creek County. We did a lot of that work.
Greg, well, you've got this map up. See that one sort of stretch of red that comes down looking like, yeah, that stretch. Byron got that. From Gary and Joanne Oakley. He was mostly interested in the portion down by the road for road base. Does that sound like your dad? Yeah. But anyway, it's part of that's part of that. That's I think at one time it was called the Oakley Recreation Area, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah. Michael, do you have another question?
Who owns the land on either side of I-70 when it's going north and south in Georgetown? It looks like on the left side of
This is
it's public land, is it?
The gray land there, yes.
gray land, a lot of that, some of that CDOT, I think, in there, but I'm not sure in some of it's private land.
It's private.
Private, I think CDOT has some land ownership in through there too. So, this is what I was referring to. This is the Taylor Kennedy Family Trust land just went up for sale. So looking for somebody with $1.2 million to help us buy this land. You know, there's some efforts going on within the community and such, but as you can see, there's a lot of that land that I was showing that was outside of HDPLC that is still within the National Historic Landmark District. It includes the Griffin Memorial, a lot of the 730 Mine, 730 Mine Trail. A lot of those areas are included within that.
Is that protected?
No, it can be developed, and it's privately owned.
Why isn't it protected if it's in the district? I don't.
Because the ownership does not belong with one of the HDPLC groups. It's owned by a private group, the Taylor Kennedy family. And Cindy knows, and she's working on this.
Question, the protection is only protection for federal action. If somebody owns their own property and there's no federal connection, you know, that's yours to do what you wish. Within the towns, both towns, the towns themselves have chosen to add protections. But for something like Taylor Kennedy, no, that's in the county, it's not in Georgetown. It's inside the landmark district, but it's completely privately owned.
Oh, I just assumed that if it was in the district, it would be federal.
No, you don't have federal action.
So until it becomes one of these colors, which hopefully maybe sometime in the future will become this nice lavender color, similar to this area here, which is the silver Blue Mountain Park. You get all these parcels here, which is part of that land sale. Then it will be protected and will only be used for natural and cultural resource protection and low-level recreational use.
But if somebody wanted to put power lines up there or other things that required federal licensing, then it would go through some review. But for the most part, all of that was zoned by the county back in the 60s. I would get, is it MR1?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're all zoned as building sites.
So put more money in that can, people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's 122 mine sites, so essentially it could be broken up. It's 122 different parcels. They're all owned by the same person at the moment, so that doesn't mean they would stay that way.
Does that include the Griffith line?
Yes.
It does.
So as you can see, all this stuff goes on to this day.
Is that the 730 area up on the upper right?
Yeah, I think this is it. Yeah. I think it points to the 730 line. It's a screenshot I took of the
And
Zillow listing.
if you look at the red outline, and you go to the left hand, yeah, right about there is where the Griffith line is.
And this is the 730
Yeah.
trail, which is a HDPLC trail under the county. And there's issues going on with that to this day. So, a couple more slides real quick. Man, I thought I was gonna get through this really quick. I get sidelined. What areas are part of HDPLC? What did we talk about in our meetings? You can see our symbols here. You will see this once you know about it. You will see it everywhere around. And that means it's HDPLC. So the Silverdale Heritage Area, and I did correct this on one copy, and it's 2 words. We talked about that the other day. The 730 Mine Trail, the Argentine Central Trail. You can see all the Notch Trail, which is the new one I mentioned. Silver Creek Trail that runs out from the lake. The Rutherford Trail, which is one of our newer trails. And the camping area that's south of Silverdale, upper Silverdale area, dispersed camping area. It's up there off the 4-wheel drive road that heads up into the Argentine Basin. Those are all HDPLC managed properties.
But Silverdale is outside of the landmark district.
Part of it is inside, part of
Or
it's
is it a
outside.
lot, yeah. It goes around the,
Yeah, and I actually just got some good GIS data. I can pull it up on that map now,
it's okay.
as of yesterday. Recent efforts that we've done, as I mentioned, the Georgetown Hydroelectric Museum Park in Silverdale, and it's now being known as the Georgetown Electric Heritage Park. Yeah, and I just changed it. I didn't save it on my presentation here. We worked with the town of Georgetown and the Clear Creek County Fire Authority to do thinning of the trees in Silverdale, and a Christmas tree sale that's the money goes to the town of Georgetown. And that was actually Cindy and I and Frank and Jeremy from Clear Creek County Fire Authority were walking around one November and said, "These make great Christmas trees." And the next year, it's Christmas tree sales. So you'll see that. That's how a lot of these things come to be. The Silver Plume Mountain Park purchase, supporting that, and now those lands are managed as HDPLC lands. We've actually worked as a group on the Waldorf stream mitigation up there, and we provide support to Santiago Mel. So we usually kind of update the group on what's going on with that. The new Notch Trail, the Silver Plume, couple things that come up in the last fire. And working to help develop the best outcome for the Excel hydro plant decommissioning. Any questions? I know we've been asking, and then this is my ploy for our coming May.
Yes.
I'm going to be talking about pack row racing.
Yay.
And this is a historic picture of burros outside the Hotel de Paris in the 1880s.
Right.
And that's me and Blaster and my grandson at the Hotel de Paris last year. That's it. My buddy Blaster. So, please come in May before our burro race. And that we'll have a lot of fun with that presentation. We got lots of good videos.
Are you bringing a burra?
What?
Are you bringing a burra?
I wish I could.
You just ran
But you know, there will be 80 of them in a couple Saturdays after I talk.
Okay.
So you will be able to see burros. And if you find me, I will introduce you to Blast.
Yes.
He's usually and he's the Colorado School of Mines mascot. I'll talk more about
He's the
those.
retired one.
He's retired.
Yeah.
He's Master Blaster.
Baby Blaster is still there.
Yeah. He's the Master Blaster. He's retired. And there's now a Faster Blaster. But I'm not running with Faster Blaster. I'm running with Blaster.
You're doing for the retired one?
Yeah, he's 37.
So Greg, back to Michael's question on Excel. Because
Yes.
as I understand it, with the landmark designation, you get a lot more that you can say about things, but doesn't mean you can necessarily stop things.
Right.
So,
Just federal action.
right, but that's under federal licensing, so what kinds of things would be possible?
You know, they could, if they wanted to, build home sites up there
Right.
or whatever. There's lots of hurdles they would have to go through outside of the National Historic Landmark District to do that. But, that's why it's best for those lands to become part of HDPLC. I mean, we're just talking about a couple small pieces of property
Right.
that PSCO still has along the Rutherford Trail.
Yeah,
And I'm trying to get them to give that to one of the HDPLC members as mitigation for the decommissioning,
okay,
so that we don't have to worry about that in the future. So, as we say in the Park Service, in perpetuity is a very good thing, and that comes with that federal law, and that comes with the designation of it being an HDPLC property, which is all that colored stuff. And then actually recently another document that I put together for HDPLC is kind of the background of the history of HDPLC, what it is, that nice beautiful map on the back, and it fits inside and color coded to go inside your little folders. So if you don't have that, it's really good. And the idea is behind this is my run through minus the boroughs. I will be doing this presentation for the county commissioners to explain to them the importance of the National Historic Landmark District and HDPLC, and then also going to the town boards, Wood George, and all the members of HDPLC to let them know and bring them up to speed, because those people all change over and a lot of them don't have the background that the people in this room have. So this is my dry run.
thank you.
Yeah, that's
Greg,
it.
I read an article about the millions of dollars that they're putting into the canyon in Golden.
Uh-huh.
And it says that from that canyon, they are going to use the old railroad trail to create a hiking, walking trail all the way up into Silver Plume, I think.
No, it goes all the way to the ski area. That's the Plains to Peaks Trail. It's going up through Clearcreek Canyon. I think that's what you're talking about.
It's going up to where?
It's called the Plains. It's going to go all the way to the Loveland Ski Area.
Oh, it's going to Loveland.
Yeah, and it'll be on some existing route and trail up Clear Creek County side, and I know they're really working on it a lot with the realignment of I-70 down there through the canyon, before you drop into the canyon. And they've been doing a lot of work. Tracy and I just drove it this fall, coming down off the peak to peak. We decided to go down there, and they have done a lot of work
Yeah.
on that trail. Millions of dollars, I'm sure, is an understatement. But that'll be a designate, and that'll be things that people come and ride Clear Creek, because it's supposed to go all the way from where Clear Creek meets the Platte River all the way to Lebanon ski area. You can ride it on bike or hike it or whatever. So, I didn't know if it was gonna happen in my lifetime, but it sounds like it's moving really fast. Any other questions?
No, it was really informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, yay.
Thanks for letting me.